Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this year's virtual program. To begin today's celebration of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'd like to welcome to the podium Clovis Chief of Police, Kurt Fleming.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us here today to mark such an important day in America's history. Today marks the birthday and the most influential voice in the American Civil Rights Movement, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. And today we celebrate his life, his legacy, and his dream of unity. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is remembered for his message of hope, compassion, and unity. And this message that lives on today. Dr. King saw a future in which we embrace diversity, celebrate our differences, and above all, stand together. In unity, there is strength, and the future that Dr. King sought is a future we must all continue to work towards each and every day. This is why we come together each year for this celebration, to continue to work towards the future to honor Dr. King's dream. Today marks the 17th year the Clovis Police Department has partnered with the Fresno Martin Luther King Jr. Unities Committee, and we are proud to be hosting today's celebration once again. Hopefully, though, next year will be in person and not virtual. Over the years, we've been privileged to welcome a long line of incredible, diverse keynote speakers from our community, and today we welcome another, and Terry Kimber Edwards, a lifelong educator and member of the Kimber family legacy. I'd like to offer my sincere thanks to Terry for joining us here today, and as we honor the life, legacy, and dream of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Thank you, Chief Fleming, for that welcome. As you said, it has been the Clovis Police Department's honor to be a member of the Fresno Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Committee since 2006. And we are grateful for the opportunity to be part of this year's celebrations. From religious leaders to educators, politicians to business owners, students to public servants, each year's keynote speaker has graciously given their time, passion, and wisdom without hesitation. Year after year, we have had the opportunity, the incredible opportunity, to host members of the Fresno Clovis community and learn from each other, to understand deeper, and to appreciate each other's perspectives, not because they are the same, but because they are different and unique and true. And because we know that by embracing our diversity, we strengthen our unity. This year's keynote speaker has generously accepted our invitation and, given her education background, will no doubt teach us a thing or two this morning. With that, I'd like to introduce to you this year's keynote speaker, Ms. Terry Kimber Edwards. Terry Kimber Edwards has been an advocate for children in the field of education for the last 30-plus years. Her roles have included elementary teacher, vice principal, principal, and district administrator in the Department of Parent University in Fresno Unified. She is a former Fresno Unified School Board candidate and believes in staying actively involved to ensure there is internal accountability at all levels of the educational system. In addition, she is a founding member of the Fresno Unified African American Networking Group and is also a member of the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. Although she is a retiree of Fresno Unified, she pursues her love of supporting future teachers as a faculty advisor of Cal State Teach with Fresno State, where she also completed her undergrad and graduate work. She is also a member of Black Women Organized for Political Action and is a board member of the Center for Leadership, Equity, and Research. As a member of the Fresno Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Committee, Terry enjoys participating in the legacy of the holiday celebration that was started by her late father, Leslie Kimber, as District 3 City Councilman. Her family-owned business, the California Advocate newspaper, founded by her late father and mother, Leslie and Pauline Kimber, is in its 53rd year of operation. She is the proud parent of two daughters, Brittany and Brooklyn, and recently became a new grandmother to her beautiful granddaughter, Marvel. Please welcome Ms. Terry Kimber Edwards.
Good morning. My name is Terry Kimber Edwards, and I first want to thank the Clovis Police Department for putting together such a beautiful memorial for Dr. King. I'd like to acknowledge George Rodriguez and Aaron Ford Horio for this opportunity. They also serve as members of the City of Fresno Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Committee. And to that effect, I'd also like to mention the members of the committee that I have the pleasure of working with. You know, we start this celebrating this memorial months in advance, and so I really think it's wise to actually acknowledge those that have been working on it for so long. So the founding member and chair, Dr. Kapoor, who knew my father very well back in the day, Vice Chair Gail Gaston, Secretary Dr. Jeff Hunt, Treasurer Honorable Eric Payne, and the other committee members are, as I mentioned, Aaron Ford Horio, Summer Gaston Garris, Topi Adewusi, James Lett III, CHP Sergeant Brian Pennings, George Rodriguez, Bishop John Sims, John Sturdivant, and then the community engagement consultant, Kimberly Tapscott Munson of District 3, Miguel Arias' office. I just think it's very important to acknowledge the people behind the scenes and those of you that are here that have put this wonderful memorial together. I want to thank you so much for that. This year's theme, the 2022 theme, is honoring the dream today with hope, compassion, and unity for all. And you know, folks, that even means even in a pandemic. Hope is so important these days that oftentimes we feel hopeless about things. I mean, let's be honest, there's things that are happening in our lives, in our families that have just had an impact on the last 2 years of our lives. And we're living in a time of history that's tested really our very souls and caused us to face sometimes real life and death situations. But it's made us face also who we are. No, I mean who we really are as a people and as a country. My focus today is on hope, and that's why that matters to me. But it starts with my story and legacy of hope, and I'd like you to notice the background. First of all, it's a beautiful background that they've put together, but one of the signs here is on hope. And no, I didn't plan that. This was actually just put here when they made the display. But this hope sign says, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And that was one of King's quotes, and such a true quote, and is very real today. As a recently retired Fresno Unified educator, and currently I serve as a faculty advisor for Cal State Teach, I was still and am still passionate about instilling hope into students, parents, and staff. My parents, Leslie and Pauline Kimber, were the prime examples of what it looked like to hope for a better future. You knew my dad as the Fresno District 3 City Councilman, who was actually responsible for proposing the Martin Luther King holiday in Fresno, along with others, before it became a national holiday, and fought for the integrity and rights of Black and brown and people of color throughout his life, including his work with Cesar Chavez and other leaders in the community. And both my parents, who founded the first Black media outlet in the San Joaquin Valley, the California Advocate, now in its 54th year, owned and published by my brother, Mark Kimber. But we knew them. They were my mom and dad, our mom and dad, who loved us and made sure that we were well educated and knew what it looked like to stand for what's right, even in the face of hatred and racism, which unfortunately still exists, and we still fight in many forms today, whether or not we agree. But I remember as a little girl, the hope and the love that my parents instilled into me as well. My mom was a Bible teacher, and she also was a women's minister, but she taught us lifelong lessons that my brother and I still talk about today. One of them was, we remember her often saying, there are two kinds of people, those that are talking those that are doing something and those that are talking about those that are doing something. And they used to say, you be the one that is doing something, and let others talk and say whatever they will, but you be doing the right thing. And you know, Dr. King didn't run for political office, but his God-given leadership was enough. He is known for using his words to change a nation. You know, we often talk about his infamous speeches. And he had hope and believed that we could and would do better as a nation of people. As a black man living in a caste system in this nation, my dad could relate in many ways to King, raising and loving his family in the midst of every possible challenge you can imagine, while believing, but still believing and hoping in the greater good of all mankind. But they also taught us that not all people are bad, that we have allies that also believe in standing for what's right. I'd like to reference a comment made in, and I'm going to show this book. It's called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. She really does, if you haven't gotten this book yet, go get it because it's a good one. She really gives a great scenario about the caste systems in the United States, India, and Germany, and she makes those comparisons. But one of her quotes when she talks about allies is referencing Albert Einstein, and this is what it says. The separation of the races is not a disease of colored people, Einstein told the graduates at commencement, but a disease of white people. I do not intend to be quiet about it. And then he became a passionate ally of the people consigned to the bottom. And W.E.B. Du Bois was quoted as saying, he hates race prejudice because as a Jew, he knew what it was. So again, just referencing how my parents would often make sure that we knew we have allies. There are many people that stand, whether they look like us, act like us, talk like us. We all agree, we all know what the right thing to do is. And then I often, as I referenced the book Caste, I do believe I'm still a lifelong learner, and I've been reading that book, but she also describes the difference between caste and race, which I think is very important when we're talking about that. She says, caste is the bones, race is the skin. Race is what we can see, the physical traits that have been given arbitrary meaning and become shorthand for who a person is. But caste is the powerful infrastructure that holds each group in its place. So we all have a place. And when you step out of your place, that's sometimes when problems happen. But do you ever often wonder what King would be proud of today and what he would still be concerned about and what he would hope for? I'm sure, though, of one thing. He would use his words to lead, to rally, to build us up for the ensuing battles that would come. You know, one of those battles right now is the voting rights for all. Including there's been a recent call to action by the King family that we need to make that a priority as we are even celebrating the King holiday. That legislation, voting rights legislation needs to pass, and we are in 2022 still talking about voting rights. Sounds crazy, right? But also, he would be concerned also and fighting for educational equity, fair and equitable employment for all people, and many more things that still exist today that he was still fighting for back in that day. But he would be proud of our courage, our fortitude to take on these issues, to ensure a better life for our young people. And let's not forget, he was a man of faith, a Baptist minister. In fact, he started at the age of 18 in his father's church. And also some other things about him is he graduated from high school at 15. He graduated from Morehouse College at 19. Boy, talk about a young person that's doing something, right? But he walked his talk He didn't just talk, he didn't just use words, he walked it. And because he knew that there was a loving God that cared about everybody on this planet. Personally, this pandemic even has affected my family. Recently, or in this last year, I've had 3 family members pass, a close friend, and also several members of close friends of mine as well, like a sibling or a parent. And not all COVID related, but still had an impact, especially during this time. But it's not what's around us that matters the most, it's what's in us. You know, there's a scripture that says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. So it really matters what's in us more than what's around us. And you know what? We were made for this time in our history. You know the biblical story of Esther, where it says, for such a time as this, because she also withstood challenges, and including the risk of her own life, but she still stepped out there and took that and made that stand. Martin Luther King once said, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Disappointment is temporary, while hope is eternal. And we were made to live in community, as King did. He couldn't do it alone. He knew that he couldn't do it alone. He needed the unity of community. And yes, I'm a teacher, so I saw the word unity in the word community, and that's important to remember. But especially as a young leader that he was, you know, he knew he needed those mentors, the family members, the friends that supported him and stood by him. And I again believe that he would have used his words to encourage us to take care of ourselves and others. And that's including masks, vaccines, whatever way we can take care of ourselves and others, he would have been for that. But he would have done it without fear or hatred of our brothers and sisters. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, these 3 remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. I'd like to end with a quote. It's actually a prayer by Dr. King that, and it's a book, another book. Sorry, I'm a teacher. I'm going to show it again. It's called Thou Dear God. And it has prayers, King's prayers. You know, we hear of his speeches all the time, but not so much about what his prayers were. This one is called The Buoyancy of Hope. The optimism, the cheerfulness of hope. And to give a little background, because sometimes it's good to know why he prayed that, the context is this prayer closed out King's sermon called Paul's Letter to American Christians, in which he uses the form of a New Testament Pauline epistle to challenge the American church. The sermon was delivered on June 3rd, 1958 to the Commission on Ecumenical Missions and Relations, United Presbyterian Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And here's the prayer. And now unto him who is able to keep us from falling, and now unto him who is able to lift us from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope, and now unto him who is able to solve the race problem if we will cooperate with him. And now unto him who is able to transform this cosmic energy into constructive force. Now unto him who is able to transform this midnight of injustice into a glowing daybreak of freedom and justice. To him be power and authority, majesty and dominion, now, henceforth, and forevermore. Again, I would like to just thank the Clovis Police Department, and I would like to end just by saying, stay hopeful, stay safe, let's continue to stand together for what is right, and as my dad used to often say, keep on keeping on. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, for your inspiring words this morning. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Fresno Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Committee members, Dr. Sudarshan Kapoor, founding member and committee chair, Gail Gaston, Committee Vice Chair, Dr. Jeffrey Hunt, Committee Secretary, Eric Payne, Committee Treasurer, and committee members who include Tope Adewusi, Aaron Ford Horio, Summer Gaston Garris, Terry Kimber Edwards, James Lett III, Brian Pennings, George Rodriguez, Bishop Sims, and John Sturdivant. And finally, we'd like to thank this year's sponsors and community partners for contributing to the committee's cause and for supporting an ongoing commitment to stronger communities. This year's sponsors include ABC 30 Action News, KFSN TV, Mayor Jerry Dyer, California Highway Patrol Central Division, Central Valley Urban Institute, Clovis Police Department, Clovis Unified School District, Fresno City Council members, Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, Fresno Police Department, Fresno Unified School District, the Ben Tapscott Jr. family, the Les Kimber family, SEIU Local 521, and the Yoruba Society of Central California. We'd also like to thank the Office of Fresno City Council member Miguel Arias, 3rd District, as well as Kimberly Tapscott Munson, Community Engagement Consultant for District 3. Thank you so much for joining us for this year's virtual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. We hope that you enjoyed the program and that you will join us for other events happening throughout the weekend. Zoom links and additional information about the weekend's events can be found below or by visiting the Fresno Martin Luther King Unity Committee Facebook page. Thanks and have a great day.